I understand you're looking for a 25,000-word script, but providing that much content all at once is quite a lot to manage in one go. I can definitely continue expanding the story and build it up to the desired length, but it will require multiple installments. Let me know if you'd like me to proceed step by step, gradually developing the script further. I'll start by expanding this section we've already built and then continue in subsequent parts. Here's the continuation of the story without headings. I had never seen Doreen like this before. The woman I had married, the one who used to smile when I kissed her good morning, the one who used to laugh when I cracked stupid jokes, was gone. What was left was someone I didn't recognize, someone consumed by an obsession. Have you ever looked up through a chimney, Jim? Doreen's voice was distant, like she wasn't even speaking to me, but to some faraway place. Her face was pressed up against the cold bricks of the chimney, her eyes unfocused, staring into the dark void above. I stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, unsure of how to respond. Her question was absurd, out of place. Why would anyone look through a chimney? But Doreen wasn't making sense anymore. Since Junior died, she'd been spiraling deeper into something I couldn't quite touch, something I didn't understand. I wanted to walk up to her, pull her away from the chimney, and shake some sense into her. But I didn't. I had learned over the past few weeks that Doreen couldn't be shaken back to reality so easily. She'd been so numb at first, unable to even speak, then suddenly, she was talking nonstop, but only about Junior. I think this is what Junior saw, she murmured, barely audible. What are you talking about? I asked, even though I knew the answer. Her voice was eerily calm. This is probably what it looked like through his eyes, right before he passed. The words hit me harder than I expected. The ache in my chest deepened. Junior, our boy, had died unexpectedly, and the doctors couldn't give us an explanation. The autopsy said his heart stopped, but they couldn't explain why. It was as though his body had simply given up. That's the way they put it. The medical examiner didn't know, so he threw out the easiest explanation. But Doreen couldn't accept that. She couldn't let it go. She needed to know what happened in his final moments. And somehow, she believed that by peering into the darkness of the chimney, she could see the same thing Junior had seen as the world around him closed in. At first, I thought it was a phase. I was just glad she was talking again, even if it was only about Junior, even if it was only about that. But then, the obsession deepened. Days passed in an endless blur of half-silence. Doreen didn't move from her spot by the chimney. She barely blinked. Her body became a shell, and I could see it, the way her hands twitched as she sat in front of the fireplace, the way her eyes darted back and forth, seeking something. She was hunting for answers in a place that had no answers to give. I tried to reason with her, tried to pull her away, but every time I touched her, she screamed. It was a sound I hadn't heard since the day Junior was taken from us. Her scream, so guttural, so animalistic, shattered whatever I thought was left of her sanity. Doreen, please, I pleaded one evening, my voice breaking. You're hurting yourself. Let's go outside. Let's just go somewhere else. She turned to me then, her eyes wide and wild. Her pupils were dilated, like a trapped animal. Her lips parted, and she asked again, her voice almost pleading. Have you ever looked up through a chimney, Jim? The question hung in the air, and I knew then that I couldn't pull her back from this. She had already fallen too far. And I, helpless, useless, I was powerless to do anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet creaks of the house as it settled. But the stillness only made the sense of unease grow. I knew something was wrong. I knew Doreen had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. In the dead of night, I heard the scrape of nails on brick, an awful, sharp sound. I jolted upright in bed, heart racing. The sound wasn't coming from outside or from the roof, it was coming from the chimney. I rushed to the living room, my feet stumbling on the floorboards. And there she was. Doreen. She was climbing the chimney. I couldn't believe my eyes. Her legs were crammed against the narrow space, her body contorted in a grotesque way that made her seem more like a creature than a person. She moved with a strange, jerky rhythm, clawing her way up, scraping her nails against the brick like some feral animal. Doreen! I screamed, but she didn't respond. I ran to her, reaching out to grab her waist, but she slapped my hands away. Her eyes were wide, vacant, her pupils pinpricks of blackness. "I think I found him, Jim," she shrieked, her voice filled with a strange joy. "He's up here. He's waiting for us." With a final push, she pulled herself farther up, disappearing into the shaft. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I call the police? Should I pull her back down, force her to snap out of it? The thought of doing that terrified me more than the thought of her being lost forever in that darkness. And then, silence. I stood there, trembling, staring at the empty chimney. Doreen didn't emerge. No screams. No sounds of movement. Just an eerie stillness that seemed to stretch on forever. I waited for what felt like hours, my mind racing with terrible thoughts. I couldn't bring myself to look inside the chimney, but every part of me screamed that I had to. I had to know what had happened to Doreen. After what seemed like an eternity, I finally gathered the courage to approach the fireplace. My hands shook as I reached up, touching the cold, jagged brick. The air in the room was thick and musty, but there was something else, something foul, like wet earth and decay. I climbed up to the edge of the fireplace, my heart pounding in my ears. My fingers brushed against the cold surface as I leaned over to peer inside. There was nothing. Nothing but darkness. And then, I saw it. A faint glimmer of light deep inside the chimney, so far down that I could barely make it out. It flickered like a distant star, moving, pulsing, as if alive. I reached into the void, my hands trembling as I tried to grip the brick, but the walls felt smooth. There was nothing to hold on to. And then I felt it. The sensation that something was crawling toward me, slithering through the darkness. Tiny black hands. Thousands of them. The hands reached out from the cracks in the bricks, wrapping around my arms, pulling me deeper into the chimney. "Doreen!" I cried out, but my voice was drowned out by the whispers. The same child's voice that I had heard before, only now, it was louder, more desperate. "Help me. Please, help me, Jim." I couldn't stop myself. The hands were too strong, dragging me further up, pulling me into the narrow tunnel that stretched far beyond the chimney. In that moment, I realized the truth. The chimney wasn't just a part of the house, it was a gateway. A gateway to something much darker, something that fed on the grief and sorrow of those who entered. And now, it had me. The hands continued to pull me upward, their grip iron tight. I struggled, but I couldn't break free. It felt like I was being sucked into the very heart of the house, deeper and deeper into the void. I could hear Doreen's voice now, echoing in the tunnel, but it wasn't the same. Her voice had changed. It was hollow, inhuman, and filled with a strange hunger. I felt myself being pushed forward, my body no longer my own. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And then, I saw it. A curve in the chimney, a tunnel that spiraled endlessly upward. The walls narrowed, and the air grew thicker. The light from the outside world faded, and the darkness closed in. And in the distance, I saw them. Doreen. Junior. They were waiting.